you can start.
Hi, everyone. We are very happy to see you at our webinar. We will be talking about honors college and honors programs. It's one of not a very well-known topic here in Russia. We discussed it with advisors before, and we thought we really want to hear about this opportunity and how it can work with international students. We are very happy to have our guests from US universities, Emily and Carol. So thank you very much for participating, and let's start listening about this exciting opportunity.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily. Can you hear me? Hopefully y'all can hear me. My name is Emily Brzezinskis. I'm the coordinator of recruitment for the Honors College at the University of Southern Mississippi. I'll let everybody introduce themselves really quick, I think.
I'm Petra Marlin, and I am the Director of International Admissions at the University of Southern Mississippi.
And I'm Carl Holtman. I'm the recruiter for Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio.
We'll go ahead and get started. So, what's on our minds for today? First, we're going to start talking about admissions requirements for honors colleges and universities. Then we're going to go into talking about applications for honors colleges. We'll move forward and talk about program structure, so how the honors colleges are structured and how the curriculum is structured and things like that. From there, we'll talk about various ways that honors colleges support students financially. And then we'll finish up by talking about benefits and drawbacks, and then answer some questions that you might have. So, admissions requirements. In order to, for most honors colleges, for all honors colleges, in order to be admitted into an honors college and to apply for an honors college, you have to first be admitted to the university. So that typically needs to happen in the fall of a student's senior year. So in the fall, that's whenever the applications for universities open. For us, the university application opens August the 1st. And in order to apply for the honors college, a student has to be admitted to the university by December 1st. So there's a really small window there for students to be admitted to the university.
So just to clarify for international students, that means that you're applying a full year before you're going to start in the university, because universities generally start in August or September. So you're going to be applying the August and September, at the latest October, November, the year before you start the university.
Yes. For us, for honors colleges, typically you have to have ACT and or SAT scores, so some kind of standardized test score. So that's really important. Do we require standardized test scores for students?
We do. So University of Southern Mississippi doesn't require SAT or ACT scores for international students to be admitted, but it is required for honors college and for other scholarships. And I don't know about Wright State.
It's the same with us. It's not required for admission to the university, but it is required for honors admission as well as some of the better scholarships that are available. So it's always in the student's interest to take the ACT or SAT.
Right. And if you're an international student, you have to keep in mind that SAT test dates are kind of limited now. They used to be more plentiful, but you really should think about taking the SAT or registering for really no later than the October test. In some cases, you can still take a December test and it might still be able to be considered, but really that October test date is what you kind of want to aim for, or maybe even the one before that. But mostly we see the October test. So now is a good time to plan ahead and think about that.
Yes, and it's also important to research each individual honors college that the student wants to apply to, because some may not accept either ACT or SAT. Most of them do accept one or the other, but I think it's important to research that to make sure. And they also, some different honors colleges have a specific requirement for where the score needs to be. So For us, we advertise that a typical applicant has somewhere around a 27. Some universities have a really hard requirement that they have to get at least a 27 on the ACT or a 1260 on the SAT. So sometimes that's a really hard requirement. Sometimes it's more flexible, but starting early on taking those tests is really helpful. So if the student doesn't quite get to that score, they maybe can take it again and try to bring their score up so that they can get to the ACT score that they, or SAT score that they need. Beyond that, GPA requirements are typically a really, really strong requirement for honors colleges. For us, we require around a 3.5 GPA or above. And you can probably explain GPA.
Yeah, so for GPA, what that means is your grade point average. Generally, that means that you're, based on whatever your grading scales are, in Russia and those areas, that's usually you're having a score of 5 mostly on all of your subjects. Maybe there's 1 4 in between there, a couple, but it basically means you're like pretty much in the 95th percentile of what your grading scale is. Mm-hmm.
And the reason that's so important is because honors colleges want to know how the students are performing in the classroom. They want students who have a strong academic background. Anything else to add, Carl, as far as?
No, I mean, again, that's, very similar to, both Wright State and then my personal experience as well when I was applying many, many moons ago.
Yes, so overall, those are the most important things to know. You have to be admitted to the university in that fall and be prepared for those ACT, SAT, and GPA requirements. I'll let you go. Flip to the next slide. I was trying to do it. So one thing I did want to clarify, though, in my experience, there typically are 3 different approaches honors colleges take to their admissions. So I mentioned the SAT and ACT scores. Some universities, the way that their honors colleges work, they admit solely based on. Can we hit? Is there a next? For the, oh, no, it didn't. I guess it didn't go in. There it is.
Okay. Go ahead. I think it doesn't work. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So typically honors colleges, there are usually like 3 different approaches that I've noticed that honors colleges take to admissions. So the first one is based solely on scores. So some honors colleges, if a student meets a certain SAT or ACT score, they will automatically admit a student into their honors college. If they have some schools that's going to be like a 30 on the ACT or somewhere in like the 1300 range on the SAT. It just depends, but I think for all the different programs, no matter which program you're looking at, which honors college you're looking at, it's important to research what the structure is and what the curriculum is like and make sure that they're getting all of the benefits from that program. But just keep in mind that some schools will admit based solely on those scores. Other schools don't look at the scores at all. So at some schools, you won't even need the SAT or ACT scores. They'll base it solely on what's in the student's application. And we'll talk a little bit more about applications in a minute. And at other schools, it's a combination of the scores and the application, and that's how we do it at the Honors College at the University of Southern Mississippi. We have certain ACT and SAT parameters that a student needs to fall into. We advertise that kind of 27, 1260 range, but we open it up to students with a 24 on the ACT or an 1160, all the way up to the highest scores that a student can get. But we also take into consideration what is in their application, and then we do an evaluation process combining both aspects. So I just wanted to clarify that you'll come across different types of application processes. We can go to the next slide, unless anyone has anything to add.
Maybe I'll just add real quick, because I realized we didn't give a brief summary of what is an honors program
Okay.
in the beginning, and I know that comes later on, but essentially these are programs in the United States that are just aimed at providing opportunities for an even more challenging curriculum than college might already be for those students who really can go above and beyond as an undergraduate. And so that is why you see you know, the application processes. So it's kind of like a smaller college within a very larger university that takes those kind of the cream of the crop students and allows them to really push themselves a little bit more. And we'll get into the real details of those opportunities a little bit later, but just to kind of know and understand why there's a separate application process or why there's a selective component to these honors colleges. Okay.
Anything else up, Carl?
Well, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, you know, now as well, because I was going to bring that up too later on if we hadn't. But essentially, I think if the students notice the types of universities you and I are both from, which are large, you know, public research universities, is typically where you'll find these honors types programs, which, like you said, take a much larger university and make it very small. Yeah. And, you know, giving the students the access to research and things like that. So,
and then as far as the universities go, typically you'll notice that probably the larger the university or the more specialized the university, the more competitive admission is for the honors colleges. So that's why these applications and these scores are so important in competing for these programs, because, you know, we're taking education to a whole new level compared to the rest of the students at the university, really trying to help these students to grow and to develop. Okay, so we'll go ahead and talk about the applications themselves. So as I said before, not every institution will have an application for their honors colleges. Sometimes they'll just only require those ACT or SAT scores. But for many institutions, they will have an application process, and that's how we gauge where a student is in their academics and how prepared they are for our different programs. So some things that you'll see on different types of applications for honors colleges, a lot of universities, honors colleges will look at a student's involvement. So their extracurricular activities, if they have done part-time jobs, if they've done volunteer work, if they have participated in research experience. The reason that these things are so important is because they want to see if a student is well-rounded. They want to see if they're motivated. Participating in athletics and other kinds of extracurriculars are really important because those things demonstrate discipline, which is a really transferable skill into the honors college. So we can see how we can take those skills that they've gained from participating in these different activities and how those can apply in the academic environment. Beyond that, a lot of honors colleges require teacher recommendations. So oftentimes that will either be a letter from the teacher that the teacher will need to write. For us, it's going to be an online form where we ask different questions about how the student is in the classroom. And then we also ask the teacher to write about the student and how the student behaves in the classroom and to talk about their work ethic and those kind of things. Some barriers there that we've experienced. We can talk about that real quick if you want, or we can talk about.
Yeah, because I can guess what they are.
Yeah, well, we typically experience some barriers with language and things like that. If the teacher, hopefully the teachers all have access to email. I have come across some schools where the teachers didn't have access to email. If the student's having trouble with something like that, they can email me or Petra. Usually if you can email the recruiter, they can help the student work through those issues. For us, I've had students either go through translation services, or they could just have the teacher write the email in whatever language is comfortable to them. I mean, write the recommendation in whichever language is comfortable to them, and then we can just use something like Google Translate. Typically helps us understand the gist of what the teacher is trying to say about the student.
Yep.
Yes. Another application tool that we use, we call them counselor reports, and that's something that some different schools will use. Basically, this is something for the guidance counselor at the high school. For us, we're trying to find out kind of what the class composition is like. So how does the student fare against other students in their high school classes? So are they in the top 1%? Are they the number one student in their class? We ask about how challenging their classes are, which classes is the student choosing to take. Here in the United States, we have classes that are called advanced placement classes and honors classes. I'm not sure if y'all have classes like that, but those are often really strong indicators that the student likes to challenge themselves and is seeking challenge in the classroom. So those things are important to us as well.
And that can be a challenge for international students also, because some schools don't have a school counselor. And so I think that's where Education USA counselors come into play and can provide those recommendations on behalf of the student as a counselor, since you all are familiar with the schools, and that's a great reason to use your local Education USA offices, especially if you don't have a school counselor.
And sometimes I've even had reports from principals as well, but those Education USA counselors can be very, very helpful there. Another component that a lot of honors college applications will utilize is essays. So whether that is asking a student to provide an essay that they've already written, or oftentimes we will use a prompt and we'll ask the student to reply to a specific prompt. And for us, that's going to be around, we require 2 essays and they're a minimum of 500 words. So that's less than a page, but we really want to we want to engage the student's writing ability. We want to gauge their attention to detail. So their writing ability is, that's typically an important skill. When it comes to international students, we're a lot more flexible on gauging their writing ability, but we still want to see not only how they write, but their ideas. That's also something that's very, very important, is how do they think about things. We want to look for creative perspectives on things, which typically our international students have creative perspectives, and that's what we're seeking. We want to have a diverse classroom where students are offering lots of different ideas.
And even structure in writing is the same across the board, because I graduated from Majoran High School, and even when I switched over into an American university and classroom, my writing skills were still really, really strong, even if my vocabulary kind of dropped off a little bit for a brief moment. But there's still a universal structure to good writing. So I think those are transferable skills regardless of your language skills.
Beyond that, those are, not all applications will have every single one of these components. Ours does, because we like to have a really, really well-rounded view of who the student is. We also require something called a supplemental item, and that's not something that very many schools utilize, but that could be anything that the student wants to submit. They can send us videos or videos of them performing if they play a musical instrument, or if they have some creative writing that they've done, or if blogs, if they created a website, if they are an artist and they want to send us a picture of some art that they've done, a painting that they've done, different things like that. That's just kind of a creative piece that they can send us, anything that they want there. Anything else? Sorry. Yeah. As far as deadlines go for these applications for the honors colleges, typically they're right around Christmas. So the student will be admitted in the fall at some point to the university, and they need to finish that application typically right around Christmas. Our deadline is January 15th, so it's just after that. So that's something to keep in mind, is to keep an eye out for those deadlines. That's something that's really important. Some universities have a rolling
like mine.
Yes. Yes.
We do too. Well, we don't, not for honors, but like just in general, we have rolling admissions.
But for us, for honors college, we have a hard deadline for when the student has to apply to the honors college. But some universities, they can apply to the honors college at any point in the year. It's just a matter of doing the research on how each university does their honors college admissions. Anything else? No? Okay. We can go on then. Okay. So we touched a little bit on like overall how honors colleges work. So we'll kind of get into the nitty-gritty a little bit about how programs are typically structured. Overall, with honors colleges, you'll typically be looking at, students will typically take smaller, more specialized classes. So somewhere around 15 students, I've noticed. Pretty often they will take the students into a smaller classroom setting so that they can be more discussion-based and they can share with each other and talk about their opinions on the topics that they're learning. A lot of schools will run their honors colleges with honors versions of their general education courses. So their core classes, honors English, honors math, honors history, those kind of more generalized classes. Some universities take a more unique approach with their honors classes. Our university, we do special topics courses that are really developmental, and the curriculum is very highly structured to build up to completing a thesis the senior year. Overall, what we want our students, I think this is something that's pretty standard with all honors colleges. Overall, what we want students to get out of it, out of the honors experience, is we want them to learn how to think differently about the world, and we want them to really develop those critical thinking and creative thinking and problem solving skills. We want them to be effective communicators, all skills that are very important no matter what field they plan on going into, I think. But ultimately, in the senior year, all of our students conduct a thesis project, and that's something that's pretty consistent with most honors colleges. They'll conduct a research project their senior year, and that looks different depending on what major a student is in, but we build them up to that, and we teach them how to do the project, and typically they'll have an advisor in their major area who will work with them throughout the year and help build them up to the completion of that thesis. Carl, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I do. So I can give a slightly different take on that as well. So the right state structure is actually very similar to what you described, kind of, leading up to the thesis requirement. But my personal structure that I went through when I went through the Ohio State Honors Program, there wasn't actually a thesis required. What they had us do as honors students is fill out what they called an honors contract, which is where you would list all of the classes you would take over the 4 years that you were going to be at Ohio State. And, there had to be a certain number of honors designated classes. And honors designated classes, again, could be the honors components of those general math, English, history classes. So I took like honors geology 101, for instance. And then upper division courses or graduate level classes could also substitute in where an honors class would be required. So the Ohio State structure was doing an honors contract for the students. So it was kind of an interesting approach. And then you had the option of doing a thesis if you would like to get an additional, like, graduating with honors on your diploma as well.
Mm-hmm. Some universities also have community service requirements, I've noticed, for their honors colleges. They take that approach where they require students to do a certain amount of community service hours every semester. Some of them will require them to do, either in addition to the thesis or in lieu of the thesis, they'll require them to do some sort of community service project where they engage in like service learning. For us, we don't require any community service. We do engage in a lot of active learning where we take the students out of the classroom to various, sometimes we'll go to different places around the country in the freshman year. I know a few other programs that do things like that, where they take the students out of the classroom either on trips or just to engage in the community, to learn in the community and those kind of things. I've also noticed that a lot of schools that have those automatic admissions based on ACT and SAT scores will not require the thesis. I have noticed that. So some of those programs don't have those thesis requirements whenever they do that automatic admission. It just depends on the program, and it's all about researching each honors college. Okay. All right, well, we can keep going. Financial support. Financial support is so important. Not every honors college is able to offer financial support for their students, but fortunately we've gotten to the point where we're able to, but that's another thing just to research for the honors colleges. It just depends on each individual university. For us, we offer every student who is admitted to our honors college, we offer a scholarship to each student. So it starts out at an honors college scholar. We call it an honors scholar award. It's $2,000 per year for all 4 years that they're in the honors college, and that will stack on top of whatever scholarships they're getting from the university.
And generally, at USM, I think based on those SAT scores, that minimum award that you'd be getting automatically is probably like $5,500. And then it goes on, I can't remember what the SAT score, it's either $5,500, $6,500, and then the next jump up is a full tuition scholarship. So you're getting that pretty much guaranteed, plus your $2,000.
I can't remember the equivalents off the top of my head. Yeah, if they can get to whatever the equivalent is to a 30 on the ACT, that is full tuition at USM. So ACT, that's where ACT and SAT do become very important at a lot of universities. Typically, the higher your score is, the more money you'll get, more scholarship money you'll get from the university. And then for us, we offer those additional scholarships. We also have full ride and partial ride scholarships based on your honors college admission as well. Some universities also offer honors college study abroad scholarships. We have some study abroad grants and research grants. So that those are funding opportunities to help fund their research whenever they do their research their senior year. So if a student wants to study abroad, we always encourage that. I think that's something that's really consistent with honors colleges, is they encourage students to participate in study abroad opportunities so they can gain a really holistic worldview. Research grants are really helpful for whenever the students are conducting their research. So we want them to be able to have a really great thesis project where they're, whether they're working in the lab and they need to buy chemicals or they need to buy equipment to help make their thesis more interesting and valuable. We don't want them to have to pay out of pocket for those kinds of things. We also offer some professional development grants. So if the student wants to travel to a conference and present their research, or to gain information from a conference that is centered around their major, we offer funding to help them pay for their travel and housing and things like that. Anything else, Carl, there?
No, I would say we have similar financial support structure at Wright State as well, whereas anywhere starting from $2,000, similar to yourself, and then going up to a full in-state tuition waiver, and then also covering room and board if they stay on campus. So we'll at least waive the in-state portion and cover room and board for a top scholar.
Great. Yes, those scholarship opportunities are important. We can keep on going, I think. Next slide. Oh, there we go. Okay, so there are lots of benefits to participating in an honors college and honors programs. One of the best benefits that I've noticed is mentoring, the mentoring experiences. So especially when you're in those close-knit classrooms, those smaller classes with around 15 students, the teacher and these students have a really great opportunity to develop relationships with one another that are very important when it's time to apply for jobs or internships and things like that, scholarships, competitive scholarships, when they need teacher recommendations and those kind of things. So those are very important. Also during that thesis process, whenever you're working with your faculty mentor during the thesis, that's also a really, really great opportunity to develop a professional relationship with your advisor, who really gets to know your work ethic really well. So that's somebody who knows you well, and they can help you develop connections at other universities. So when it is time to apply for graduate schools or professional schools like medical school or law school, they may know somebody at other universities where they have connections. So that those relationships are very, very important for our students. Housing is another great benefit. A lot of honors colleges at various universities will offer honors housing for their students. For us, we have a specific dorm where our students live, where they have their own private bathrooms they have a roommate and they have their own private bathroom in their room, and sometimes they have special programming and things like that, and they have various activities that they have within the dorms to help promote that honors education. That's not all schools, but many of them do offer those things. I mentioned the active learning experiences before, so a lot of universities offer those active learning experiences. For us, we take our students all over the country. In the freshman year, we go to Washington, D.C. I've been with a class to Houston, Texas. I know there's one university that sends each student individually, pretty much wherever they want in the country, to go and conduct interviews with anybody that they want to, pretty much their freshman year. So, and they pay for all of the travel and expenses for those trips, which is fantastic. It's going to vary from school to school with whether or not they do that funding and those different activities. Research experience is very important. I always think that research experience is important no matter what program they intend to go into, no matter what field that students intend to go into, because no matter what field that they want to go into, none of them can move forward without new information, and decisions can't be made in the real world without new information and without research to back it up. So I think it's important for students to understand that research process. So whether they want to go into graduate school or professional school, or if they just want to enter into the real world, that teaches them a lot about that process of how to ask the right questions about things and find answers so that they can make informed decisions in the real world. It also teaches them a lot about project management and effective communication and problem solving, a lot of really, really marketable skills that students need, especially for graduate school, where they will be conducting research most likely anyway. So it really sets them up. And I'm sure, Carl, I'm sure you can touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, again, my experience, I think out of those, I mean, the key things for me were the mentoring as well as the research experience. I mean, just to be able to work with professors who were the top in their field. I mean, I was a political science and a languages major. So working with, top political scientists, which if I was not in the honors program, I might've been, stuck in a large lecture hall and not have had as much access. So, I mean, those were definitely key, and they certainly helped with my grad school applications as well. The recommendations that I was able to pull together, from these professors certainly helped, get admitted to all of the programs that I applied for grad school, and, get me some very nice funding offers as well. So it was very, very beneficial.
I mean, it's hard to develop those relationships whenever you're in those large lecture halls.
Yes.
Having the opportunity to be in these smaller classes. Having the opportunity to be in these smaller classes is a really, really great opportunity to develop those relationships with those professors whenever you need them later on down the line. That's not something that every student in a regular undergraduate experience has the access to. Beyond that, leadership and professional development skills, those are also very, very important. I often tell students, everyone graduates from a university with a degree. Everyone's and whenever you're going to apply for jobs and you're going on to apply for graduate schools, everyone's going to have the same degree as you. So you have to figure out ways that you're going to set yourself apart. So whenever you are applying for these programs, how are you going to make yourself competitive, and how are you going to set yourself up to being having a competitive application against everyone else? And so that's where I think these relationships, and I think the research experience, and I think these professional skills are really, really important, because not everybody has developed those creative thinking skills and those critical thinking and problem solving skills. Not everyone is going to come out of the university as an effective communicator. So I think that's why these types of programs are so important. I have a chart on the next slide that talks a little bit about, yes, so this is from the ACNU. This is the, I'm not even gonna try to remember what the Academic Association for Colleges and Universities. So this is research behind what hiring managers are looking for in their potential employees. So like I said before, everybody is going to be graduating with degrees in their various areas, but these are the skills that hiring managers are looking for. And if students don't have these when they graduate, they're not likely going to get hired for things or accepted into programs that they're applying to. So the main ones that I want to highlight are communication, the effective communication, both written and oral communication, the ability to think critically, and to perform analytical reasoning, to make decisions. That's something that people don't really think about, but making informed decisions and effective decisions is also a very important skill that students need to develop. Teamwork, the ability to work as a team with their fellow students. That's where I think those discussion-based classes are really, really important. And also working with their thesis advisor. Sometimes they will be developing that, like working in a team lab on campus. If they're working in the sciences, that happens a lot. Time management, which is something that all of our students get to experience, I think, no matter which honors college that they're in. Students have to learn how to balance their time so that they can perform well in their courses. They can, if they're holding a part-time job or if they want to participate in extracurriculars, they have to figure out how to balance their time with those things. Another skill that hiring managers are looking for is being proactive. So students need to figure out how to develop their work ethic. I think that's really, really important. And also knowledge application. So figuring out ways to apply the information that they're learning in the classroom to the different activities that they're performing. So I just wanted to highlight those different, this real world research that those are real things that hiring managers are looking for, and that I think honors colleges really, really contribute to.
And I just wanted to add one other quick benefit, at least again from my personal experience, and I think the way it works at Wright State as well. A very tangible benefit honor students get is priority class scheduling.
Yes.
So that's very, it's very important, and it's a great benefit that you have first dibs on, any classes being offered before, other student, at Ohio State, it was a week before any other student could register. So honor students had a whole week to, work out their schedule before it actually opened up to the general population.
Yeah, I mean, if students want to get in with get into a class with the right professor at the right time that they want, that's so important. Because I mean, we all know that different professors teach classes in different ways. So if they've heard that they want a specific professor, that's really, really helpful. Or if they have a work schedule, if a student is working while they're in school, they need to build their schedule around that, around their work schedule. I think that's also super helpful there. Yeah. Anything else?
No,
Okay.
I think we can go to the next.
We'll keep going, yeah. Okay, so we talked about the benefits. We did want to talk about some possible drawbacks, but just because we like all of our students to be really, really well informed about everything whenever they're coming into honors colleges. So something that students do run into is the workload. For some students, the workload can be overwhelming because we have high standards for our students, and we expect them to perform very highly whenever they're in an honors college. So students need to be prepared for, whether it's more readings than typical students are going to be doing, or writing more in the classroom, just having more challenging content in general. So students need to really come in with strong time management skills, I think, is something that's very, very important. And also probably healthy ways of coping with stress, I think, is another important skill that people don't really think about. Okay, sorry. Another thing to consider is that for some honors colleges, how there are going to be additional housing costs and housing requirements. So for instance, with the honors college at our university, we require all of our freshmen to live in honors housing. And to live in honors housing, for some students, they may not necessarily be able to afford the cost difference to live in honors housing. It's a little more expensive to live in the complex that the honors housing is located in, because the housing is nicer and it's newer on campus. So if students are having issues with financials, that's something to think about. And that's something that's I've noticed is pretty consistent with a lot of universities when they have those housing requirements. Beyond that, some honors colleges I've heard have program fees. So they will charge a fee to participate in the honors college. So not a lot of them do that, but definitely find out about that. Do your research behind that, because like I mentioned before, a lot of them offer scholarships, but there are some universities where I guess they put such a high value on the education that they're receiving that they charge a fee in order to keep their students participating, I guess. So just look out for that whenever you're applying for those programs. Any other drawbacks that y'all can think of?
I mean, not that I mean, the workload would have been, the major one, but I can't think of any other drawbacks per se. I think honors programs are great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, overall, I think the benefits outweigh the costs, but it's definitely important to think about the type of student that you are encouraging to apply for the honors college. If it's a student that does not cope well with stress, that's something to think about. But students who always exceed your expectations or have really strong work ethics, those are typically the students that we're looking for honors colleges. Okay, we can keep going. Next slide. We just wanted to touch on some additional notes, kind of like some really important things that we already mentioned this, but those test dates are really important. Petra, I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, so just planning ahead to take the SAT and ACT. Right now, internationally, there are some countries experiencing some crises, like China, for example. We know on the international end that things can happen at any time that might, you know, suddenly the SAT might not be available. And I know that happened with the coronavirus in China. It's probably going to happen in some other countries as well. So I think at this point, international students just really need to plan ahead, and you might need to plan ahead to take like, don't wait till the last minute to take the SAT. I think try to take it in May or, you know, even earlier, because what if that October test date is canceled? You know, schools might not be able to be flexible. Like, I know our scholarship office will not be flexible with taking later tests. And so I think it's, as international students, I think it's really just important to assume that something might come up and take the test early in this climate that we're in these days. And then some honors colleges have a late entry option, and we do at University of Southern Mississippi, where students can kind of come in maybe after they've completed about half of their, or what was it, like 40 something?
Yeah, the first 2 years.
First 2 years. And especially for honors colleges that have like an earlier deadline, this is important for international students. We have phenomenal international students at University of Southern Mississippi. Many of them, even if they're not admitted to the honors college, they're already participating in research as undergraduate students, because they're go-getters, they're really smart, they seek out those opportunities, and they may not have known about honors college, or a lot of times our international students just apply later. They don't apply in that December time frame. And so we have quite a few international students that have taken advantage of that late entry into the honors college. You know, they're already doing all the hard work that's required, so why not also benefit from it? And, you know, the monetary, you know, what they get financially isn't quite as high as when they enter as a freshman, but it's still something, and it still allows them to graduate with honors and do the thesis and get the benefits of all that hard work that they already put in during that that first half of their degree. So there are other options at I think many institutions where you can still get into the honors college on the late end, or if a student attended, you know, we do have international students that attend community colleges or transfer, and so they can also look for those kind of transfer honors programs.
Petra mentioned community colleges, and this is something that we talked about on our own a little bit. There is a distinction between honors colleges and honors programs. I don't think that I don't think it's a really strong distinction personally, but honors programs at community colleges happen as well. So if a student is looking at a community college in the US, oftentimes those community colleges have their own honors program. They're not typically structured in the same way that honors colleges at larger universities are structured, but they do offer more specialized content and more challenge to those students. But typically what I've noticed, especially if a student has strong scores, international students included, can typically get stronger scholarships over all 4 years applying to a large university, as opposed to going into a community college and then transferring into a large university. So definitely keep that in mind as well. If you have any students that are considering a community college. We talked about the late entry. So we do have our late entry program. And then also Carl mentioned the rolling entry. That rolling entry is also important, the freshman year senior year, I guess.
In your senior year.
Yes. So not all students have not all honors colleges have those hard deadlines. Some honors colleges will have a rolling entry where they can apply that senior year.
And the only thing I would quickly add is, it doesn't hurt you to take the SAT or the ACT more than once. You know,
Yes.
So it's always in your interest, I think, as a student, if you can, you know, to maybe at least take it twice, because you know, if you can bump up to the next bracket in a scholarship offer, then it more than pays for itself.
Yeah, I know at Southern Miss, you know, a student, in order to be admitted, you know, they don't have to have that SAT. They could have, you know, another form of English proficiency, or through the TOEFL or whatever. And as long as they submit a December test, then they can still get, you know, maybe they had a lower score on their October or a May test, but then as long as they're admitted by December 1st and submit the December test afterwards by February, they can still bump up to a higher level. So yeah, it's worth it to check with the schools about those policies and what's required to, you know, get more scholarship if you're already admitted, and how long you have, because it varies. Some schools say as long as you submit another test by the time school starts, we'll bump you up. It just depends on the school.
Okay. I guess we can go next.
Yep.
Next slide.
Okay, so now we're here to talk a little bit about each of our institutions that you've heard in general about the Honors College. So as we mentioned before, Emily and I are from the University of Southern Mississippi. We're located in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which is in the very south of the United States, not as far south as Florida, South Florida, but we're pretty far south. We're about an hour and 15 minutes away from, or hour and a half away from the Gulf of Mexico. And we're about 2 hours away from the city of New Orleans. That's kind of the next largest city that people tend to know about. We were founded in 1810, and we have almost 15,000 students, and 423 of those are currently international students, and it's split pretty much 50-50 between undergrad and grad students. We're a Division I school for athletics, so that means the highest level of athletic competition in the United States. Generally also means that you're competing at a national junior level in your home country if you're trying to apply and get a scholarship for a Division I school. And I will just mention that it's easier to get an academic scholarship than it is to get an athletic scholarship. I always throw that in there. We're an R1 research institution, which means we operate at a level of very high research activity according to Carnegie, and we have over 180 academic programs, so lots of different areas of study. We can go to the next slide. This is just a little information about our freshman scholarships. I did mention some tidbits throughout the presentation. We do have a very early deadline, unfortunately, and that's tough for some international students. And so I really try to get the word out to Education USA advisors about what those deadlines are, because we do offer up to full tuition that covers the full non-resident portion of tuition, and those scholarships are automatic if we have the test scores and everything submitted on time, plus the honors scholarship. So I think there are some very good opportunities there, as well as some staggered amounts as well. So, you know, ranging from $2,500 a year up to the full tuition value. You can go to the next slide. Okay, the other benefit that we have at University of Southern Mississippi, being an R1 institution and Division I athletics, we're probably one of the most affordable institutions in that category of schools. Our total estimated annual cost for an international student, whether grad or undergrad, it's about $24,500, and that includes, you know, we really try to include everything. Like, we're including the health insurance, your little bit of personal spending, your books and supplies, or course fees, the housing and meals. That's what it would cost to live on campus at the most reasonable housing option. But a lot of our students that live off campus tend to find that they're somewhere in that similar ballpark, or cheaper if they choose to live with roommates. We don't require international students to live on campus their first year, although I always encourage it, because if you live on campus for 1 year, you can also apply to be a residence hall assistant. Yes. And a lot of our international students do that because our international students are so well-rounded, well-spoken, they're very capable, have really good interpersonal skills. So we're seeing an increased number of international students becoming residence hall assistants. And what that means is that you basically are kind of over a floor in housing, and you are trained with mediation skills, with you know, hosting programs for your residents, and just kind of being, you can also get a single room, so that's another benefit too, right? But those jobs cover your housing, your meals, and your health insurance for international students, which that's kind of a big deal because that's a little bit of chunk of change for international students. And you get paid hourly for the 20 hours that you work a week, so you get a stipend as well. So that's a huge benefit, especially if you're trying to offset some costs, and a lot of our students do that.
Yes.
Okay. All right, next slide.
Okay. My profile is extremely similar to Southern Mississippi. Again, I'm a large, 18,000 students, research one. I think we have 800 international students. Tuition-wise, you beat me on the price. I mean, price-wise, I'm about $31,000 all in. But so. Other than that, I mean, we are extremely similar institutions, which again is kind of what I wanted, which is what I pointed out earlier, especially for the honors program. Like, you typically find these, especially at larger public research universities like ourselves, to make the experience smaller and give the students more access. So again, also Division I athletics as well, but as my colleagues mentioned, it's much easier to get an academic scholarship than an athletic scholarship at the Division I level, for sure. That's all I need. Students can always look at this slide later more in depth, because I think EdUSA wants to get to some questions at this point. So question time, I think.
We have a question in chat box. Oh, okay. So this is just invitation for questions. While students are thinking, maybe I ask, do you mind?
Go for it.
Are there any differences between honor programs or colleges at public and private universities?
That's a good question. I mean, part of what I take from this is, especially with the public research institutions like ourselves, is that we create the honor colleges to kind of give the student that small liberal arts college experience. So it kind of makes a large public research university a very small private liberal arts experience, but you still get all of the access to the great research and professors. Is kind of how I've always seen that.
I mean, I think every honors college, no matter at which university or public institution that you're at, public or private institution that you're at, I think each of them has the opportunity to be unique. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a matter of researching each individual honors college, because I think even that we vary even between public universities.
Okay, thank you very much. And maybe another question, what are your tips for choosing an honor college? For instance, when we advise students, they usually ask how to choose it, how to choose the best for me. Well, we usually give advices on how to choose university, but what about honor college? Maybe something specific.
I think if you're an international student, I know a lot of times funding is a huge deal for international students. And so I think that might be part of it, is looking at, okay, what are my, combined with my regular scholarship options, what, from that school, what additional benefits, financial benefits would I gain from an honors college at this school? Because some schools might not give anything for their honors college. It just depends on the school. You might have to pay something. Yes, depending on how competitive it is, and they have people banging down their door getting it. But the other thing is it's not just about the honors college; it's the whole package. I think if you join an honors college at one school and they don't have the type of facilities and research that you want to participate in, and that's kind of counterproductive. So it's not just the honors college by itself. I think for international students, it's the whole well-rounded package, and knowing where are my limitations? Are they financial? Are they where I want to be? What kind of major and research I want, and does it all align together? And like Emily said, and Carl said, there's some programs where it's just like an honors contract. Okay, I'm going to take these courses. I'm going to graduate with honors. And maybe there's some other opportunities there, but I really kind of have to seek them out, versus the honors college that's going to push you and say you have to do these things and finish a thesis in order to graduate with honors, and how challenged you want to be. You know, and maybe it's fine for some students to just say, yeah, okay, I get a little extra money from this, and I just have to take these courses and I'll have this designation, that's good for me, versus no, I really, really want to push myself.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And another question, I don't know if it's a good question or not, but I'm just curious, how many international students are at your honor programs, honor colleges? I mean, maybe in your universities.
I should know that. Do you know that?
I don't know exactly how many. I'm like trying to count like numbers, but I don't know all the time.
I'm trying to think.
Carl, do you know for your university?
I mean, I would say, our international students have always been more graduate heavy. So of the undergraduates, since I've been doing the recruiting now, I've actually been pushing a lot of students to apply for the honors college. I think, I want to say we have about 15 international students currently in our honors college, and we are definitely trying to grow that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Almost 10.
I see. Thank you. Well, at least we have to tell them more often, maybe, about this opportunity.
Yeah, we would love to have more students. Some of the difficulties that I've run into, especially this year, because we had a nice core group of students, and we sent out some communications via email to encourage students to apply, and then I would, then a student would say, oh, is there more funding available? And I said, well, I sent you an invitation for the honors college. Did you fill it out? Oh, no, I didn't do that. All I can say is, as international recruiters, I mean, email is kind of the main source of communication that we have. I mean, we're reaching out a little bit into WhatsApp and that kind of thing, but if students don't have it, then we can't communicate that way. So I'm really trying to, find other ways to try to get this information out to students, and maybe through EdUSA advisors. But we try, once the students are admitted by that December 1 deadline for scholarships, we go back into the pool and we send out emails, and I found that some students are checking emails, and I've talked to some high school counselors in different places, and they say, yeah, they just don't check their emails. But when you're applying to colleges, that's kind of the main source of communication that a school has with international students. We can't send you, paper letters and that kind of, it's not going to get there. So I don't know. I think I would suggest that for students applying to college, maybe create a separate email account that you just use for applying to colleges.
Yes.
And really kind of be on top of that, because schools might be sending you some great opportunities, but you're never going to know about them unless you're checking the emails.
Definitely. I mean, I will echo that as well. I mean, we as universities, we love using emails because, part of it is that's what our systems are built around at the end of the day.
Well, we got a question from our student. Thank you for your answer. And another one, could you tell us if Russian university graduates are assessed as overqualified if they would like to apply for a master degree? Well, probably, I think the student mean that probably he or she has already have master degree and think about having another master degree at American college.
I mean, I can take this one because I think, from my experience there in Russia, where they may be coming from is somebody who has a specialist degree, which would be equated to a master's degree in the US. So, for that person, it's not that you're going to be overqualified, but you could probably, if you're looking to do a second master's degree, yes, you could do that, or go into a PhD degree. So, but different schools would determine whether that specialist is equivalent to their master's or not. And I would always advise a student to go through a service such as WES or ECE anyway, since they can assess that much better.
Okay, thank you very much.
Not a problem.
Thank you for all your valuable contributions, dear speakers. And we have to move and tell a few words about 120 credits program. If you're just a beginner, you can start with attending our webinars and participating in this program in order to start working with Education USA. You will have a lot of useful information, so please try. Let's move to the next slide. Our next topic will be about 2 years programs. It's on March 18. Please join us. And there are some other interesting topics ahead. You could see them. And you can easily find us. Please use our website, or any other contact information. Thank you very much for being with us today. And have a nice evening if you are in Russia, a nice day if you are in the US. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.